Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that is this week having yet more existential questions about cinema and cinema timings. My name is Tosin, I am the host. I am based up in the middle of the UK, near a city called Birmingham, and joining me as ever on the Isle of Wight, a small island off the coast of the south coast of England, is Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
Hello.
Sharon, we are talking about having a bit of an existential crisis because there's a couple of different things that have come together. I think that we are still living in a post-Spider-Man No Way Home world.
Yeah.
And we're also living in a I think that there's reports that there's some film studios that are worried that there might be a little bit of a lockdown coming around the world, so some films are being held back. It's kind of like we're at the beginning of 2020 again. So we are left with a week in which there was not that much to see. There was
no.
Yeah. Bearing in mind that there's usually three of us on this podcast, we are left in a week in which there was not that much to see. So we managed to see two things. There were two things available for us to see. And what scuppered you from actually seeing the thing that you were hoping to see, Sharon?
Yeah, I had planned to go and see one, but this week at the cinema on the Isle of Wight where I live, normally very good with timings, they only had one showing for the whole week, and it was at 2:30 every afternoon except the weekends. So I don't know if they designed it so that no one would see this film because no one in work could possibly see it. And I only worked 3 days a week, and then the one day that I was free to see it, we had a doctor's appointment that meant that I wasn't available to see it. So yes, things did not go according to plan this week. Cinema.
That is because this is the Electrical Life of Lewis Wayne that you're talking about. That's the film that you would have seen if you were trying to get to the cinema to see this week. And the Electrical Life of Lewis Wayne, it's a film that I look at, Benedict Cumberbatch, Claire Foy. That's a film that there is no way that they are aiming for anybody but an older crowd.
Yeah.
Like a more mature crowd. I would say probably starting round about my age, maybe younger. So people on their way to 40. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
At the very end, people on their way to 40. And I'm thinking most of those people will be at work. So who are you showing it for at 2:30 in the afternoon?
Yeah. It's crazy town. I mean, last week they did have two showings. It was 2:30 again, and then at 6:00. And that was the only two. But again, at 6:00, that is normally the time when, if people are in work, it's when they're getting ready, preparing to get ready to go out. It's a quite quick turnaround for people who are in work to better get home from work and then turn around to go straight back out again. So it wasn't aimed at anyone.
This is why, I mean, it should come as no spoiler, or I think quite a long time ago on this podcast, it was called Netflix for Cinema. We decided, you know what? We don't really think that there is really a fight between Netflix and cinema. We're just going to enjoy both. we're just going to enjoy them both. But we're going to keep calling it Netflix and cinema. But this is one of those times where you think this is a problem that cinema has to sort out. The convenience of when you have time to sit down at home and watch something versus when they're saying, no, this is the time, and if you don't have it, if you don't come watch it this time, you will not watch this film. It's kind of like, I'm not so sure that that comes from, for me, a bit of a bygone era where, cinema could say, well, this is the only place you're going to see things, and if you don't see it now, you've missed it, and the exclusivity, and there's still something in there, but there's a problem that they need to figure out with the timings, because some films, a bit like what I think you've alluded to with Lewis Wayne, or Electrical Life of Lewis Wayne, have been sent out to die.
Yeah.
They have been sent out.
Were not bothered if anyone saw it or not.
Yeah. It really does feel as if the makers are like, you watch it, you don't watch it, we don't care, we're getting paid anyway. I'm like, are you really?
It's unless they just thought, when we know it's going to be a bit of a niche film, so we're just we need to, we've got a couple of screens to fill, we'll put it down there.
Yeah,
we get 3 people who see it. Okay. We haven't lost much because we've still got Spider-Man playing on 5 screens.
unless they're trying to aim for, they were talking about
Grey
the sort
pound
of
again. Yeah.
the grey pound, for the retirees, because they can come in the middle of the day. There's not going to be a whole bunch of youths clogging up the cinema.
No.
But I'm not sure that is a good strategy if you're trying to make
I
money.
don't think that market is back out there yet. I don't think they're ready for risking cinemas and things, especially when you've got to wear a mask all the time now in them. I think that is likely to defer some people from going.
So essentially, what we're saying, Cineworld Isle of Wight is you messed up. You messed up,
Yeah.
and you didn't care if anybody saw that film or not. Okay, maybe you did well enough last week where you had 2 showings, but apart from that. But yes, so that means that what we have one film that we have seen in the cinema. The other film that was an option this week to see in the cinema, unless we wanted to see Clifford the Big Red Dog, which, as much as I'm dedicated to cinema, not yet. My daughter is not old enough yet to drag me to
Not quite up to that yet.
Yeah, it's and if I had to choose one film this week, it wasn't gonna be that film. So I saw the 355 in cinemas. So you only saw something on Netflix or at home this week. What did you see?
I saw a film, one of the new releases on Netflix called Mother Android.
Mother Android. I saw this. It popped up. I was interested in that. And I saw another new release. It's been a couple of weeks now. It's been a couple of Twitter warring weeks of release for Don't Look Up. Which
that's the one that's had a lot of buzz about it. Yeah.
It's had a lot of buzz, yeah. Not necessarily good.
Positive buzz, yeah, but people have been watching it maybe just for curiosity's sake.
People have been watching it and people have been fighting. People have been fighting. It's gotten into a political thing. Even people in the political arena have been fighting about this film and about stuff. But we will get to that. We'll get to that later. So let's kick off in cinema. I will kick off in cinema with the 355. Now, this is a film starring Jessica Chastain, Lupita Nyong'o, Penelope Cruz, Diane Kruger, and I keep Bing Bing Fan. It's a Chinese actress.
Yeah.
But a Chinese actress. Her first name is Bing
Shawnee,
Bing.
our other Oppo, he likes sort of Bing Bing Fan, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think her name is Bing Bing Fan because I keep getting it. I keep thinking Bing Bing Lee, but I think it's Bing Bing Fan. And yes, it's a film starring them. You might have the eagle eye amongst you would have spotted that those are all women. Now, this is a spy movie it's a spy movie that has women in its main cast, and this is a film. I mean, we spoke about it last week, and Sharon, you were lamenting the fact that you didn't like the idea of just making a film and just shoving women in there as the main, because as the main protagonist, just to be like, yeah, we're women and we're leading the film. You said you didn't like that. You said you weren't sure who.
To me at all.
Yeah, you said you weren't sure.
I don't know who that is aimed at. Is it like, sisterhood, let's support the sisters and I'm like, no, thank you. If you're making films on my behalf as a woman, it's like, I find it slightly patronising.
Yes.
I think women have fought for their place in the intelligence agency. So I haven't seen the film. They have fought for their place in security forces, in the police forces around the world.
Yeah.
And they've earned those places. And so someone to come along and say, hey, we're going to put an all-woman team out there. Well, unless my history has just been lacking, there aren't all-women teams in the intelligence agency. So just to create that for the purpose of a film is undermines the hard work and the sheer graft and the sheer guts it's taken for women to hold their own in a male-dominated society. By suddenly saying, hey, look, all the girls are doing it for themselves. It's like, no, they haven't been. They've fought to get where they are, to work alongside men, not to be told, hey, look, we're going to give you your own little niche thing. They haven't had any favours done for them because they're women. So why make films to say, hey, all the girls are going to do it together? It's like, no, they haven't been doing it like that. And that's not how the world has worked or does work. So please don't present this film as like a act of women, empowerment when it's nothing of the sort.
I'm not sure I have anything else to add, and that's going to be 3 out of 5 stars. But obviously spoken from your point of view as a former police operative.
I was a civilian in the police, but I worked in the police, and I saw how hard women fought from when I first started, having one woman per shift, possibly one woman per police station.
Yeah.
Where I know at one station on the Isle of Wight, they put a request in, can we have a WPC, please?
Yeah.
To do certain jobs. To then, I've got friends of mine who, when they join the police now, there's those obstacles are gone. They can be in any role, they can do any job, they're in senior officers, they are through every rank in the police force. And they got there by sheer hard graft, not because, you know, to make any political points. They fought their way there.
Well, you see now, and I think that there is a good film to be made in that. And the first time this film was announced, the 355, because the reason it's called the 355 is because during the American Civil War, there is a well-known female spy who did a lot of good work during the American Civil War, but nobody knows who she was. Nobody knows what her name is. She was just referred to by the code 355. And when I first heard about this film, I thought, ooh, this is going to be a story kind of about that and about this and about the legacy and everything like that. And I was really interested in that film. And last week when you were complaining about what you thought this film was going to be, and you were like, who wants to see that film? And I was like, well, I want to see that film. It's like, I want to see that film. I want to see women on screen kicking butt. I want to see that. And it's funny that you mentioned Charlie's Angels, because I did have that down as one of the films. Don't worry, I'm still here. I did have that down as one of the films that I was going to name check during this, because Charlie's Angels. Yeah, well, the thing with Charlie's Angels, the latest iteration of Charlie's Angels, directed by Elizabeth Banks, starring Kristen Stewart, was that was made to be almost like a meta commentary on the state of women. I would say probably in Hollywood primarily, but in the world today, and a lot of the things that was made in that film, it was kind of like, they didn't try and hide it, that look, we're not, the bad guy here isn't somebody who wants to blow up the world. The bad guy here is the patriarchy. The bad guy here is the way women's bodies have been used. They made no bones about that. Now, this film is more like it's kind of like, okay, so you're talking about the fact that women fought to stack up beside men, to fight beside men. Yeah. But if you watch the films from God knows however long, you always had all these boys on adventures in which the women were doing nothing but making the tea in the background.
Yeah, they were the bird in it, or they were the support staff.
Yeah. So, and now this film plays like somebody saw one of those films and thought, you know what? I want to be there. I want to be the hero. I want to be that, and I have not seen that. So essentially, this is my chance to do it. So I'm just going to put all the women in those roles that would usually go wrong. And so let me put it this way: you could flip this film, you could gender flip this film, and you could have the only difference I think that you would have is that with the man would be the lone wolf cop. He would just be on his own, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I'm a renegade. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to be a one-man army and do it." But when you have it like with a woman in charge, what you have is the sisterhood, and it's kind of like played into that. And those are the tropes. So the trope for the man is that he's a lone wolf. The trope for the woman is that she has her sisters with her. And apart from that, the film is very. This film is like paint by numbers. I'll tell you. Let me put it this way, right? This film starts off with an aerial shot over like a whole bunch of trees, and I just looked at that and maybe I've watched too many films, but I looked at that and I thought, okay, if this is the kind of film that Sharon is complaining about, and I think it is, in my head I just said Bogota, Colombia. And then as the character went up, as I said that, and then the caption shows up on screen, 5 miles outside Bogota, Colombia, and I just went, "Oh my god, it's gonna be one of those films."
Wow.
And from that moment, this film was working hard uphill, was running uphill to try, because I was like, "Oh no, it's one of those films," and they do all of the cliches that you would have expected in a, I don't know, Stallone movie in the 80s or Bruce Willis action film, where it goes from there and it goes into a scene that the only reason that scene is there is like you have Sebastian Stan and Jessica Chastain, and it's kind of like a lovey-dovey scene, and you're like, what the? I thought this was supposed to be a spy movie. It's supposed to be, what the heck is this doing here? And have you heard of the term fridging?
No.
Okay, so fridging is a trope that appears it started off in comics. Because it started off in comics where it was a Green Lantern comic where essentially the Green Lantern's girlfriend was killed and put in a fridge. And it's a trope that shows up in things where you have a male character, and they have the male character, and he has a wife or girlfriend or something like that. And the wife or girlfriend is only there to be killed so that the man has an excuse to go and do something. Yeah. So in John Wick, for instance, you could say that they fridged the dog. Yeah, but it happens over and over again, and there's such blatant examples.
Rambo Last Blood is a good example of that.
Yeah. Essentially, it happens over and over again. In action cinema, there are instances of fridging where you have a female character that is so badly sketched, and the only reason she's there is to die so that the male character has an excuse to feel something.
Reason to be angry. Yeah.
Yes. And there are when I say about paint by numbers, so you have 5 characters in this, or 5 female characters, and there's there's characters that they introduce into each one of their lives, and you're just playing you're just watching it going, okay, he's dead. Yep, he's dead. Oh yeah, he's not going to last to the end of the film. And there was even one that it showed up, and I was like, okay, he is going to die, but you're never going to see the body, and he's going to come back as the bad guy. I said this in the first 5 minutes of the film. Boom! I was right. So it's just so paint by numbers. It's so kind of like there's even lines. There's lines where somebody says something and someone's about to reply, and I'm saying the line before the person has said it because the script is just that basically written. Yeah, is that obviously written? Yeah. There's some things that, okay, Sean usually of this parish, people who are listening and are paying attention online are noticing that Sean is not here. So Sean, if you're listening, Sean, stay safe in Thailand.
We'll see you in action.
Yeah, we know you're missing. But there's scenes in this that made me turn into Sean with his whole, why would you do that? That this film has, these people are supposed to be spies. They're supposed to be highly trained spies from around the world. It has the least secure safe houses ever. Every single safe house in this film is found within 5 minutes and broken into like the walls are made of paper. It is just so... It's kind of like they decided, for the plot, we need this to happen right now, and therefore we're going to ignore everything else. And there's also a bit because they're supposed to be on the run. There's this idea of them supposing that these spies are supposed to be on the run. But I'm like, then how did you get access to a cargo plane? If you're supposed to, how did you get that Benz? How did you get all that equipment? If you're supposed to be, there's just stuff that doesn't make sense.
Surely and it's you'd be cut off from all of that.
That's what you'd think. You'd think you'd be cut off from all of that, and then they commit the sin that you, Sharon, are really, really dead set against. They commit the sin, which is that they now try and wrap a whole feminist thing around it that does not feel earned. Yeah. And I know I'm saying that as a man watching a film starring a whole bunch of women, but I honestly don't think that the feminist message that they try and wrap around the whole thing feels earned. It feels tacked on. It feels like Charlie's Angels did this way better because all the way through it was telling you this is what we're doing here. Yeah. And there's nothing of that. It's just like a straight down the middle action flick which is competently enough made, and when they try and tack on the feminist message, I'm like, what the? Where did that come? You did not earn that. No. And yeah, so yeah, essentially, and then this film ended, and when it said directed by Simon Kinberg, it made me think, I think I'm going to stop watching Simon Kinberg films because he also directed X-Men Dark Phoenix, which is...
Okay, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that is...
that was Sophie Turner, wasn't it,
That was Sophie Turner. It also starred Jessica Chastain in that one. But I think it was just so straight down the middle. It was essentially, you finish watching X-Men Dark Phoenix, and the reaction was, meh. And I was like, it was there. It was kind of, I expected that to happen. That happened. It wasn't particularly...
You get the feeling that, the X-Men has become a spent force because of films that have been a bit,
Well, yeah, X-Men, that version of X-Men is done. It's the next time X-Men are showing up, it's going to be Marvel doing something hopefully good with it. So, all in all, this film, I mean, I think it is reasonable enough. I would give it a 3 out of 5, but it just, oh, good Lord, it sucked it out of me. It sucked it out of me. I just kind of like, by the time I finished, I was like, oof. And the problem is, what gets me is because you have Diane Kruger probably gives her character the most, because there's a whole thing about she's a German sort of spy, and there's a whole thing about the fact that her dad was a double agent for the Russians, and she actually turned her dad in because she found out that he was working for the Russians, and there was that whole thing. And so there's a little bit of something in there. I think the actors are good. Like Penelope Cruz plays a very sort of like, everybody else in the film is like, yeah, let's go, we're gonna shoot people in the head. Penelope Cruz just spends most of the film going, I just want to go home. Why did you let me go home? And so I think that they are good. I just really, really wish that they had been served by a better story and a better made film that just didn't have so many holes you could drive a bus through, and just wasn't so predictable from the off. I mean, the fact that I call that the opening scene, they were trying to set it in Bogota, Colombia, before the thing even showed up on screen, it's just so hackneyed. 3 out of 5.
Yeah, it's too much signposting.
Yeah, 3 out of 5 are the very much, and I'm going to stop there and pass over to you, Sharon, because I am disappointed. Mostly that everything you said last week was spot on. And everything you said last week was...
about that, because I don't want to hate these films, but my experience of watching them has been like, oh, thanks on behalf of womankind for your patronage.
Yeah. It just felt like a standard 80s thriller that had just decided we're going to replace the lone wolf, all-American hero with an international. There's some things that you can see are kind of worthy, but it kind of feels as if, oh, we're being worthy here, therefore you must watch it. And I'm like, no, tell a good story. No. Tell a good story in a good way.
All the way along, my grumble has been about anything that has got like a feminist slant is like where. Like one of my gripes has been like when they sort of feminizing a lot of male characters. It's like, write decent roles for women.
Yes.
Do that instead of taking a role that is popular, is well established, and then just casting a woman in it as if to say, hey, look, we've cast a woman now. That's okay then. It's like, just write decent roles for women. Just do that. Instead of just trying to take a male role or male films and then saying, we're just going to put women in it, and that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, it's not okay. Just write decent roles for women.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
From a point of the view of the actors, like Jessica Chastain is also a producer in the film. I can kind of understand, but like for instance, me growing up as a black kid in Nigeria in the 80s and seeing all these action films where it was predominantly a white guy doing.
Yeah.
If I had become an actor and I'd gone to the point where I'll be like, the kids of my youth, oh yeah, I want to see a film where it's like, and if they came and they offered me like Commando, where I would play the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, but now he's black, I'll jump at it. I mean, the film's not going to be any better than Commando. Probably it's going to be worse. But I can imagine why I would be attracted to that. And so also if you say, oh, we're going to make all these sort of, these movies that you could see almost like Dirty Dozen but with women, and you're like, oh yeah, cool. I never saw women in that role. I know I would want. I can understand that. But the way it's done is just so ham-fisted, and the fact that the way they even bring China into it is so kind of, how like you have this whole thing where every film ends in China now because they're trying to get the Chinese market. It feels so cynical when they bring China into it. So cynical when they bring... Like, you can look at that and you could just sort of say the only reason they have China in this film is because they want China's money. That's the only reason they have Chinese characters in this film. But anyway. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to Mother... Was it Android? Mother Cyborg?
Android.
Mother Android. Tell me about Mother Android on Netflix. What's this about?
Yeah, Mother Android, it's a Netflix film. I believe it's a Netflix original, but I could be wrong in that. I have been in the past. Basically, it's set in a world where we were introduced to our two main characters, who are a woman and her boyfriend. And it's just before Christmas, and they have discovered that they are pregnant as a couple.
Yeah.
And he is more into the relationship than she is. And so she's not quite sure what she wants to do, what the future's going to hold. So she's in this uncertain state. And she goes to her parents' house just before Christmas to see them. And then you're introduced to their manservant, who is an android. And so this is the first time that we realise that this world in which we are now joining is not our own. It is set in, it's like recognisable as us, as Earth, contemporary to us. Clothes and all the household goods look modern, but you have this fully functioning sort of adult looking, human looking android who is like a domestic servant. This is set in America. And then they go to another house party where during the course of the evening she goes into a room with one of her friends to tell him about her personal situation, and then they hear this sort of like pulse, this sort of alarm signal, and then basically all hell breaks loose as all these androids that were previously basically invisible, just staff, suddenly have turned on humankind. And then there's like a widespread massacre ensues, and her boyfriend then grabs her, and whichever survivors are left from this, their own domestic servant suddenly ripping them to bits, they flee. And then the story jumps ahead to basically when she's just about to give birth. She's heavily pregnant. They're hiding in the woods, and they've heard about an army camp where they can go and that will help them to get to a port where there's a plan to get to evacuate children and families to get them out of America. To another, the Korea basically is one of the countries mentioned, but they're like being evacuated from mainland America. And so that is our story. So we have this woman who is about to give birth, trying to navigate through a world where basically all the androids are hostile and they look human. So it's only when they get close or when they go nasty that you realise that they are actually androids. And so before they go into any safe place, their blood is tested, their eyes are tested. So they have to be scrutinised to make sure that they are genuinely human themselves. And so into this, you have this.
Okay, Sharon, you might just be a very good storyteller, but I'm liking this world that's being built. So
I don't really want to give you much more away, because I think that from that point on, it starts getting into spoiler territory. But then the story as it carries on deals with their relationship, the fact that she wasn't as into him as she thought she was at the beginning of their relationship. And then obviously crisis, baby, fighting for their lives. You then see how their relationship changes through this violent catharsis, as it were, where all these different emotions get played out. And then you see the little bit into the world in which we're now living, and there's a few twists, turns, frills and spills and moments of high tension and drama, as you'd expect from a film of this nature. But so that being said, that's all I'll say about the story. But I thought, so my reaction to it was, I thought it was very well done. Actually, it's downplayed quite a bit. I mean, as you would expect in like a post-apocalyptic world, it's rainy. I think we know there's an apocalypse coming because it's going to rain, isn't it?
Oh my God!
That's one sure sign that it's an apocalypse in the cinema is it's raining a lot, but not all the time. But it's a bit rainy, it's a bit grey. Everyone's a little bit depressed.
You never see a post-apocalyptic world in Hawaii, do you?
No. It's normally there's woods involved, which again we know it's apocalypse when you take to the woods.
Yes.
That, there are the tropes in there, but then it does throw a few bits in there that it's not your average post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
The fact that the enemy is this remorseless android. I mean, it had shades of Terminator at some point.
Oh yeah.
When I was thinking about the first Terminator, especially where you don't always see it, but they describe it, don't they? That they are unrelenting. They come in, you don't know they're there, and because they look the same. They've got the skin, the bad breath, and everything. To quote sort of from Terminator.
Yeah.
So I thought there was shades of that in it, but not to its detriment. So no, I thought they did it very well actually, and it was quite low key. Its tone, I think, was because instead of like being really hyper and really like they had those moments, but I'd say the tone of the film was slightly underplayed. The colours were sort of slightly
muted,
and it felt like a sort of downplayed sort of thing. But that appealed to my sensibilities, so I actually liked it.
All right, cool. So before I ask you for a star rating, it stars Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yes.
And Chloe Grace Moretz is one of these actors who I am never quite sure what to think of her. I'm never sure if I like her or not. It's like do I think she's a good actor or not? I'm not sure. After Hit Girl in Kick-Ass, I don't know. So how is she in this?
Yeah, because again, when I was looking at her, I was thinking, I should know who you are more than I do. Because I'm trying to think, when you think back to what she's been in, I'm thinking, I know you've been around a while now, because you're an adult, you're not a child anymore.
Yeah, but you started as a child.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, what have you been in? But but no, I thought she held her own. I thought as it is, the focus is very much on her.
Yeah.
She's the mother. And it's very much, from her point of view, everyone sort of all the stories sort of circulates around her. I thought she held it well. I think you feel sympathy for her at times, you feel annoyed with her at times. So yeah, she did hold the story together.
All right, cool. We have gotten to let's just take a moment for that to sink in, people. Yeah. We have gotten to the point where Chloe Grace Moretz is playing a mother. Is playing might be a young mother, but a mother nonetheless. This is the one who shocked us all by coming on as a 13-year-old in Kick-Ass and with a potty mouth, and you're like, oh, I can't believe that coming out of somebody so young. Yeah, she's now a mother, people. All right. So how many stars would you give this?
I liked it, but I would still say it was probably a 3. I think someone like Sean, who'd probably look at it, I think there's things in it he would probably rip to shreds. He'd go, why would you do that? Why would you do that? I could see that he would be, there's certain scenes where I know he would be like, what are you doing? So I know that, and I think people who would probably, well, maybe more critical than I am about storytelling would be a bit like, why would you fall for that in some parts of the storyline? And or things that you don't see would be like, well, that's just not, is that credible? Really? So I think it would be, I would say it was a 3. I certainly enjoyed it. It was a good 3.
Yeah.
But I would say it probably didn't elevate into it wouldn't be sort of fighting for its place with Terminator for like a apocalyptic android battle type film.
I think you've just come up with a whole new feature for the show, which is we make Sean watch things that we think he'll hate. And we see how right we were. We're like,
okay, a blood pressure monitor so we can do it before the film.
Yeah,
and then we can do it after the film.
Just monitor his blood pressure and heart rate throughout the film. Note, at what point does he say, "Why would you do that?"
When it's fine. Because we know, because I've been to the cinema with Shawnee, and he'll appreciate this when he listens to this, and that when he enjoys a film, he's almost like recumbent. He is almost like vertical. He gets really low in his seat, and you can barely, if you sat next to him, his head is like down here.
Yeah.
He's really relaxed, he's stretched out, and he's like enjoying it.
Yeah.
But the more he dislikes it, the more upright he gets. Then you can tell if he really doesn't like it, he is like taller than I am in the seat. He's just like, oh. And you can feel that tension radiating off him. And so I think this one, he'd probably be sort of relaxed for parts of it. Then every now and then he'd sit up and go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. I think the 355 would be an issue all the way through, unless he just decided to go, oh, it's a wonderful, it's just like an old school action. No, I think he'll hate it anyway. Yeah. But all right, cool. So 3 stars for Mother Android, and now we stay with Netflix with another Netflix original, and this is Don't Look Up. Now this is a film with a absolutely stellar cast. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Blanchett, Meryl Streep. Let's see. It's just full of great actors and stars.
Lots of people.
Yes, yeah. It has Timothée Chalamet, Jonah Hill, Tyler Perry. It's just chock block with all sorts of stuff. And there's been a lot of stuff written about this film because this film is written and directed by Adam McKay. Adam McKay, who was known for doing a lot of films with Will Ferrell back in the day. So he did things like Step Brothers, and did he do? And I think he did Anchorman. Yeah, he did Anchorman. But in his later career, he switched. He did The Big Short. He did The Big Short, which is all about the financial crisis. He did Vice, which is all about Dick Cheney. And he's come up with this one. So his later films have been a lot more about the state of the world and the way the world is, and it's kind of like almost kind of like screaming, going, "Why are we like this?" And Don't Look Up is a film in which a PhD sort of astronomy student played by Jennifer Lawrence, Dibiaski, spots a comet. And when she spots the comet, everybody's like, oh my word, what an amazing discovery. You found a comet. Oh, it's going to be named after you. This is one of the biggest discoveries that we found. It's massive, it's huge. It's the size of Mount Everest. And then in the opening scene, everybody comes around and is congratulating her. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a professor and is like, oh, this is great and all that. Oh, well done, Dibiaski, well done, Brit. He's saying this is so good. And so they start doing some calculations to see what the trajectory of this thing is. And someone asks him, it's like, oh, what's that number? It's, oh, that's the distance it is from the Earth. And then someone asks, why does that number keep getting smaller? And he's like, okay. And he does some more, and then he asks everybody to leave the room. And he turns out that he's like, oh no, that is on a direct collision course for Earth. And this is an extinction level event. He says this is, so far, so Deep Impact. So far, so Armageddon. Yeah. So but then what happens is that they go and tell people the discovery. They go to NASA. They go all this until they get to the point where they go to speak to the president, and they say, we need to go speak to the president because this is important. We need to take action. If not, in 6 months, this thing is going to wipe everybody on Earth out. And they go to the president of the United States, played by Meryl Streep, President Orlean, and the president is kind of like, all right, okay, cool. So I'll tell you what we should do. I'll say right now we sit back and assess. And the president's chief of staff, who is the president's son, is like, yeah, sit back and reassess. So you begin to realize when you have a president in office that's more concerned with image, who has their family members as part of their cabinet, you begin exactly. You begin to realize a little bit of what this film is doing. And then they decide, oh, we are not getting anything from the president, so they decide to go on to...
a comic called C19 or anything like that. So DVD19.
They named the comet. They named the comet after the person who found it. So Dibiaski. They named it Dibiaski, and so they decide, okay, fine. If the president will listen to us, we're going to go on TV. We're going to go into the news, and so they go on to like a sort of Good Morning America type TV show, in which the hosts are Tyler Perry and Cate Blanchett. And so in typical Good Morning America, Good Morning Britain, or breakfast TV, they're just trying to be jolly and everything about that. And so they're trying to talk about the fact that this comet is coming to the Earth and it's going to kill everybody. And they're like, oh wow, well, Tyler Perry is like, well, can it hit one particular house? Because there's my ex-wife's house, and I really, really like it if it come and hit that house. Essentially making a joke of it. Nobody's taking this thing seriously. And so the film now goes through the rest of society and sees how different people, and the overriding thing is nobody is taking the comet seriously. And then Mark Rylance shows up as a combination of Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, essentially a tech billionaire who has his own ideas for what he wants to do with the comet. And the thing that strikes me all the way through watching this film is everything that's shown in the film is what would happen. It is actually what would happen. The fact that the president will be wondering, how can I use this for my political gain? The fact that the people on TV will not pay any attention to it. The fact that you'll have a massive area of the internet that comes up in arms to say the comet does not exist. I don't believe that the comet is there. The fact that all these things, I'm like, this is exactly what would happen. As a matter of fact, this is what we have been seeing happen over the last 2 years. Yeah. So for me, people have been complaining and yelling about this film. The main objections to it are that this film is not subtle, and I'm like, I don't think it's supposed to be subtle. I think
is that a requisite then to make subtle film?
well, you see, that's the thing, because I feel like people are saying, oh, as a piece of art it isn't subtle enough, it's just way too on the nose. And I think that is the point. I think that because this film was there's two things you can look at and you can say, okay, this is what it's talking about. It's climate change, number one, and number two, the pandemic that we're living through. But knowing the way films are made, I know that this film, they must have started writing this thing before the pandemic started, and they must have started filming it before the pandemic hit. So it was being written about climate change and using this thing coming towards us as an allegory for climate change. But then even the director himself says that they had to take things out of the film because they wrote them in there as jokes, as trying to be push things to the nth degree. But then those things actually happened in real life under the American administration that handled most of the pandemic. He was like, oh my God, no, people are going to think we just copied that. We have to take it out of the film. So number one, people have complained that it isn't subtle enough. I'm like, I don't think it's supposed to be subtle. I think you are trying to refer to the way the world is now. The world is a very unsubtle place. You're supposed to, and for me, the point of the film is to show this is what would happen. Therefore, it's not going to be subtle because this is exactly what would happen. It would be this brazen. It would be this annoying on one side and all that. And the second thing that people have said about the film is, oh, it's not funny enough. And there's a scene where Leonardo DiCaprio he pretty much has a meltdown on live TV. That's very akin to, you remember Albert Finney's, it was Peter Finch. Peter Finch's I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore from Network. It's akin to that. And there's a bit where he says, maybe because these TV anchors are like, oh, we're just trying to make it fun. And he's like, maybe the end of the world is not supposed to be fun. And I think that is in that line, you're talking about the film. And the film is essentially saying, yeah, we're talking about the fact that it's just showing you what would happen. It's almost kind of like a thought experiment. If there was a comet coming to the Earth that was going to kill us all in 6 months' time, what would happen? And I think this film, I was watching the whole thing going, yeah, they nailed it. Yeah, that would happen. That totally rings true. That makes sense. And the fact it's called Don't Look Up is because at one point, people start off this social media campaign because by this time, people have dilly-dallied so long. And I don't think it's a spoiler, but people have dilly-dallied so long that you can actually see the comet. Like if you look up into the night sky, you can see the comet. So people start off this hashtag saying, just look up. Look, that is the thing. That is the thing coming for us. We need to do something about this. And then people start up a rival hashtag, don't look up. and the fact that they now bring on we have Ariana Grande in the film, and she plays a pop star kind of version of herself who they bring on, and they have to get her to sing a song about the thing for people to actually take it seriously. And if the pop star doesn't speak, nobody takes it. I'm like, this is where we live. This is where we live right now. This is what would happen. I thought the film was really, really good. I would give it a 4 out of 5. And I know that my leanings are probably a bit more liberal. Because I don't think that there's some stuff on your stereotypical liberal side that I think, hang on, that's stupid. There's some stuff on the stereotypical sort of conservative side that I think that's really stupid. But I do know that my leanings are a bit more towards the liberal side of things. And that's what this film seems to have come down to. They've turned this film into a fight as to the people who are liberal think there's nothing wrong with this film. How dare you say there's anything wrong with this film? You're a climate change denier. And the people who are conservative are like, oh my God, for goodness sake, look at these people. They're just, it's so unsubtle and blah, blah, blah. That wouldn't. And for me, I thought it was a 4. I thought it was a 4-star. Purely because I thought what was shown in the film, pretty much every single thing was bang on the money and would happen.
We've seen it, yeah. Because I saw the trailer, and my only fear when I saw the trailer was I was thinking Mars attacks. Because I thought
a film that I love, by the way. I love Mars Attacks.
They threw all these names at it, and I thought I saw these big names, and it's all good. It's presented as like, yeah, this great thing, and I thought, oh, I've seen that before. So I was a bit worried that it would go down the whole Mars Attacks route, but you have reassured me actually that it might be worth checking out.
I think it might be worth checking out. I think it is. There is definitely also Mars Attacks has this sort of absurdist tone to it, but an absurdist tone relating to 50s invasion movies, 50s and 80s invasion movies. This definitely has an absurdist tone, but take that sort of tone and apply it to social media nowadays and what actually happens. And I just thought it was it felt almost to me like a documentary about the future kind of thing. So I thought, I thought everything in this thing would actually happen, which is why I was hoping to see that you'd see it and see what you thought, because I don't think it's a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I don't think it is a polemic, but it's not trying to be anything else. And
I did look at it and I sort of shied away slightly because I was just like, I don't know if it's going to be my bag. But I'm more inclined now to check it out.
Yeah, but I thought it was. I think all the performances are great, and oh my God, I just remembered. There's a bit where what's his name? Guy who played Hellboy first time.
Ron Perlman.
That's it, Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman shows up to play quite an offensive character, but he's quite funny. Essentially, there's all these little bits where people just show up to do something, and it's quite good. But yeah, I'll give 4 out of 5 for Don't Look Up. Yeah, right, and that is it. That is the end of the show today. That's the end of everything that we're going to review. Without having another film in cinema, I don't think it's worth it actually saying.
No, which is.
Yeah, I feel like this is a particularly Netflix steroided up podcast, so we won't bother doing that.
Yeah,
but
we're still in pandemic mode, though, aren't we? We did have this for our pandemic shows where there were no cinemas, so
we did.
We're just sort of like we're not quite. Back to...
Well, and even though cinemas might show up and they might mess things up themselves by not having reasonable viewing times, we're still thankful that we have cinemas back.
We're still happy to keep going.
Yeah, we're happy that we have those back, and that Spider-Man No Way Home is still bringing people in. So my wife saw it this week and just sent me a head blowing up emoji. She was like, "Oh my God, that was so good." So yeah, so until next week, when we will continue on a quest to find something that is in the cinema and at a reasonable hour that we can watch it. It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye for me.
And a goodbye from Sean, wherever he is in Thailand. Thank you very much for listening.